Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to another Earth Institute Coffee Morning. As you may tell from the background behind me, I'm on campus. This is only my second time on campus since it all went crazy, so it's very strange to be here, but quite nice. It's also very nice to be introducing Anne Murray from Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown Council, who has very kindly agreed to share with us her experience as a biodiversity officer in a local authority and her ideas around the connection between what local authorities are trying to achieve and what universities are doing as well. So we've worked with Anne over a number of years on a number of different initiatives, so it's really nice to have her here speaking with us this morning. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, Taz. Good morning, everyone. And thanks to UCD and to the team for inviting me to talk. It's greatly appreciated. So I'm just going to talk about my role as Biodiversity Officer for Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown and also the very important task of engaging with universities. So just a bit of background. So I would have studied science in Trinity, and I spent a lot of my time out on Bull Island, which is a lovely place to study. And then when I left college and left my studies, I went to work for Fingal County Council, monitoring the construction of the M1 motorway from Dublin to Belfast, mainly concentrating on sensitive ecological areas such as the Malahide Estuary, which it traversed. And then I went to work for National Parks and Wildlife Service, and myself and two botanists surveyed the coastline of Ireland. So that was a very intense 4 years of running around the coastline of Ireland. And then I did the SPA boundary reviews, and they are the designated sites for birds on behalf of National Parks and Wildlife as well. Then I joined consultancy as a senior ecologist, and I worked on a lot of international projects. It was a large global firm I was working for, and we worked on sustainability, on global reporting initiatives, and some national projects here in Ireland. And I worked a lot for county councils on reviewing their planning applications, and including that very famous other wall by that ex-president now of America. And so then I joined DLR in 2017, and as Biodiversity Officer, my main role is to prepare the County Biodiversity Action Plan. And the purpose of this is to ensure our protection and appreciation of biodiversity at a local level. And it involves consulting with the public to develop the plan, which will occur next year in relation to public consultation. And to implement the actions of the plan is all important, because we don't want it to be a plan that sits on a shelf. So we're gathering baseline information about biodiversity, which is really important, and then providing training and guidance to the public and our staff, and raising awareness of biodiversity. I've also just prepared actually this year the Invasive Species Action Plan for DLR, and I'm carrying out the actions of the Climate Change Action Plan for DLR. So a lot of plans, and providing advice to planners, developing guidance for them, and also providing input to other projects such as Cherrywood Strategic Development Zone and our own county development plan. And in gathering biodiversity information, we're reviewing all other previous information and surveys that have been done. We're mapping our ecological network across the county, including our important EU annexed habitats, and looking at locally important biodiversity sites that occur, and a range of species from birds to otter and protected species. So the aim is to map all our biodiversity and to provide information for our decision makers and our land managers to ensure that everybody is well informed. My role also involves raising awareness, so providing events for the public and other information online, providing workshops and training for our staff, engaging with schools and providing videos and other media. So I've done an animation for to explain ecosystem services there a year ago. So hopefully some of you guys have seen that. I also helped to implement the actions of Dalkey Island Heritage Plans. So there's a very important tern species that occurs on Dalkey Island and breeds there during the summer. And this little guy down here on the right is a common tern. So it's important that we manage that, and we work with Birdwatch Ireland. I'm also implementing the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, actions for local authorities. So we're working with staff to create pollinator areas. We have a Slow to Mow campaign to raise awareness about that. We also carry out non-chemical control of our weeds, create wildflower meadows, and trying to connect all of this back into our ecological network. We have conservation grazing up in Fern Hill. You can see that beautiful creature on the right hand side down there. She's a rare breed Rimmon cow up there in winter time. And I also have an eco-seeds project starting next year of gathering local seed in our county. So our partnerships are very important to us. We partner with other local authorities, we partner with the biosphere, and we also partner with universities. And so universities play a really important role in providing scientific data. And as we've learned very much this year during COVID, scientific data is really important to assist in our decision making. And local authorities can then provide a location, the places for students to learn. And engaging with universities really forms a really important part of our actions as part of our biodiversity plan. So one project we've done last year was with Ava Freeney, and Ava was looking at all our ponds, looking at the biodiversity of urban ponds, and she studied places such as our ponds in Marley Park, and she found a great diversity in these areas for aquatic creatures. So it just goes to show that some of our man-made ponds are providing for biodiversity. And then we had a project on looking at the flora of our pollinator sites by Stephen McKern, and that really showed that even though we're only at the starting point, they are starting to show greater diversity. And then we have a PhD student, Elena, who is looking at green infrastructure, and Elena is looking at some of our green roofs. We have one ourselves on a depot out in Ballyogan, and Elena is planning to monitor that roof to see how it's functioning, in particular in relation to biodiversity, if it provides biodiversity benefits such as soil biodiversity. And then looking at our tree pits, and we have a large number of tree pits now in our Cherrywood strategic development zone. And so these tree pits infiltrate rainwater, and they form a really important part of our green infrastructure, and hopefully Elena will get to look at those. And then we have our artist in residence, Mark Clare, who's working in looking at really focusing on biodiversity in Dun Laoghaire, and so we're collaborating with UCD in relation to that work, and we'll talk more about that maybe next year when Mark has finished his project. We've worked with TCD as well on pollinators. A PhD student is currently looking at our pollinators, and we're working with NUI Galway also and the National Biodiversity Database Centre, looking at our hedgehogs across the county, and that's going to start probably early in next year, and it involves citizen science, which is very important. So, you know, there's plenty more scope for more projects. We just need to plan well in advance. And I think that's really, you know, one of the important steps is if we can plan perhaps a year ahead, make sure we know what projects possibly might be happening the year after, and how that will look and how it will be structured. And EcoBroker has formed a great starting point for that, and Tamara has worked really hard on that, and hopefully we can use that more or expand on it. And we've plenty of teams to work on: nature-based solutions, ecosystem services, all our variety of habitats and species in Dun Laoghaire. Monitoring is a really important aspect of looking after our biodiversity. And working with InCase on the natural capital, it has shown there's a major gap in looking at species and habitat condition. And so I'm about to run out of time, I think. So I'll finish up there. Thank you for listening today.
Thank you very much indeed, Anne. That was fantastic. That's an amazing array of work that you're undertaking, and I don't know how you fit it all in.
There's 3 of me. I wish.
And also beautiful set of images there as well. It was really nice presentation. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? So I mean, I was struck by how you're very much at the business end of environmental management and conservation. You're there on the ground, working directly with the public and with the decision making and so on. So that's the real interface in a way where day-to-day things are happening that affect nature and our environment in a very real way. So it's really nice to see your receptivity to engaging with academics and researchers, and particularly kind of nice to see a real selection of honours projects and master's projects. Those projects I think were, and 1 or 2 kind of with PhD students as well. But maybe that's something to discuss a little more. As you say, EcoBroker is an interface that we established. Tamara, I can see Tamara there now, so Tamara set that up. Did a super job of creating that connection. And how do you feel that that's worked? And I noticed you kind of said, oh, well, the important thing is to try and establish a dialogue early on around the kinds of projects that could be of mutual interest.
Yes, and I think, looking from a local authority perspective, we generally do try to plan a lot of our projects a year ahead. And a lot of that has to do with budgets, but also with how we're fitting in maybe with other plans or projects that the County Council are starting to move on. So I think, yeah, it's really important to plan. And I suppose coming from a project manager side myself, I would be very much of that mind frame and that mindset that if we plan, then we can see what it is. Well, we first of all think about what it is we need, what may be priorities, and then plan for the students to understand fully what it is the expectation from the County Council might be or the needs are. So that it's great when those discussions take place well in advance. So it might involve ourselves talking to maybe the supervisors of particular projects, or anyone who's going to plan for a work or a piece of study for a student. I think that's really important for us to do that early on.
Absolutely. And so what would be your advice, I guess, to people that want to get involved in that way? I guess it's all about making the initial contact as far in advance as possible.
For sure, yeah. And I know myself when I'm thinking about all of the things that come up on a daily basis for us, things we don't even know are about to happen, so we're very much have to be reactive also to a lot of projects or items that come in on us maybe all of a sudden. So when we want to plan projects, we prefer to do it in a very calm, managed manner early on, and have it set in stone so we can start it then. So I would recommend definitely anyone who has a student or who is thinking ahead of planning something for the following year to contact us well in advance, maybe from January onwards of the previous year. Yeah. And so that we can interact in to and fro about things, and also we can feed back what type of projects we are doing. So for example, the eco-seeds project that I mentioned of gathering local seed, that's something I'm talking about this year, but planning for next year, and it won't happen till next autumn, you know. And maybe that's something that if I was talking to some of the college staff in UCD, that's something I could mention, and then they could think about next year and how maybe their students could interact with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they could reach out through Eco-Broker or potentially directly to you, I guess, to initiate that kind of conversation around what could...
Yeah, for sure. Either process, yeah, that's fine. Either contact me directly or contact through Eco-Broker. Either is fine.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Please, yeah.
No, I'm Frieder Lutz. You're probably not so familiar with me. I'm a visiting professor from Germany, and I'm teaching landscape architecture.
Oh, fantastic.
With Karen Foley and Michael Heurich and others. So my question is, actually, I did already do local seed collection with prison inmates with students in Germany. So long ago in the 80s. I have a question. The theme of compensation and mitigation of impact, you didn't mention it, but it certainly must play a role. And the question is, do you get the chance to compensate impact even off-site, like doing a rewilding project of a stream or establishing habitats to compensate for an impact at an area where you might not even be able to compensate it? And concretely, that would be a very nice project to offer to landscape architecture students who are interested in ecological themes. So do you have concrete mitigation or compensation projects lining up?
Yeah, so I would say welcome to Ireland, and I hope you're getting on well with your studies and your stay. Well, in relation to potential impact, in relation to development, so that's development planning. Certainly, when I work with planners and with planning applications, looking at planning applications in particular, say for example, we've had this come up in our new Cherrywood Strategic Development Zone, which is the development of a new town centre and associated residential area, 3 parks and a school. And working with developers, looking at the potential impacts of any of those developments. Some of them have resulted obviously in an impact on biodiversity. And there are 1 or 2 where I have asked for example, the translocation of an orchid-rich grassland, which has just happened in October. So that involved moving turfs of orchid-rich grassland to a receptor site, which is within our lands in Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown, next to our park. Also, so that is a type of mitigation for the potential loss of that habitat had we not done anything about it. And then we had some instances where I have asked the developer to collect the seed where he cannot translocate the habitat, to collect seed and to provide it to us as a county council, and we will then spread that in areas that we deem suitable. You know, for example, there's some seed that is suitable for in and around of edge habitat, you know, where we're losing maybe soil from a disturbed ground that has shown that it has some very interesting plant species in the soil source. So we've asked them to collect that seed, and we will then spread it to other areas that are suitable. So yeah, so they're the sort of projects that we look at for sure.
Thanks. Actually,
Okay.
I meet my students twice a week. We are a small department, so this afternoon I meet them in the studio. I go out on field trips regularly, so it's not only being in lockdown.
Lockdown has put the kibosh on us all.
In our department, we still get to do quite a bit of face-to-face teaching. So thanks a lot.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Frida. Noah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Anne. That was a very good presentation with a very good overview of the kind of work you're doing in the local authority. So thanks for sharing. I'm just following up on some work that I've done in the past in Dun Laoghaire, and there was a project that you were actually, linking to your commentary that you're actually mapping habitats or mapping biodiversity, I suppose, through the county. In the past, it was like half of the county was mapped in terms of habitat mapping. Has the full county been completed? Do you have a comprehensive set of GIS-based biodiversity information for the local authority now, or where you are at with that at the moment?
Very, very good, very relevant question. So, because of COVID this year, the review of that habitat mapping that you are speaking about was a desktop review by a botanist, and she has identified, she has reviewed all of the habitats that were surveyed. The half that you speak of are in the urban side of DLR, which is predominantly hard standing, but has a lot of smaller patches and, you know, areas where streams are along the edge of hard standing areas. So yes, that's an area that we are talking about in relation to looking into that further for coming years in completing that mapping. Then the dilemma is that the mapping all becomes outdated, the previous mapping. So she has actually reviewed we had aerial photographs taken across Dun Laoghaire in a high resolution just there in September, October 2019. So that means you can literally zoom down in and see very great detail. So I asked her to use them when she was reviewing the habitat mapping, and I'll be publishing that review actually once we have it, the edits, etc., finalized. So you'll be able to see that. I'll put it up online.
When can we expect that? Do you know?
Well, I suppose at the moment I have it's kind of that time of the year where I have a glut of projects that they're all waiting to be reviewed, but I would hope to get it either before Christmas or in January up online. Yeah.
So you'll have a full picture of biodiversity and habitats in the county. So
that's where we're working towards, and I suppose because there was I haven't been in Dun Laoghaire long enough to kind of really start from scratch, so to speak. It will take some time because every year you have to rely on budgets and stuff, you know, so but we'll get there.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was curious about that same question, but more in terms of the biodiversity itself and the process that you go through to collect the biodiversity information, and also where the information resides. You mentioned a relationship with the National Biodiversity Data Centre. Is that part of your process for kind of archiving and future access for information, or do you have standalone systems of your own for keeping that information and making use of it?
Yes, we share all our data with the Biodiversity Database Centre, but at the same time, I've been talking to our own GIS technician, and unfortunately at the moment we only have one who is serving the entire county, with a view to having a central place for biodiversity on mapping, you know, in a map browser. For DLR. So that's something that I want to work towards. But again, it took till this year to actually even just to review the habitat mapping. So it's one of those things it's certainly something that I want to discuss with her next year in terms of the GIS technician being able to facilitate such a web browser. But I think once we get that set up, I think then everything will flow, because I have been gathering quite a lot of GIS data. For example, the county otter survey, that, you know, I will put that report up online as well, but I would like to have all of this information on a GIS, on a web browser, for everyone to be able to. We have to consider obviously protected species and sensitivities, etc. So it's really just getting all of those logistics set up. And that I would hope to start to talk to my GS. She, in fairness to her, she's working on the county development plan at the moment, so she's pretty stressed.
Superb. So there's a question from Tara Deriljan, with appreciation for your presentation and the insights from it, and curiosity around the kind of biodiversity officer role, and whether there's one in every county council, and whether it's a comparatively new role. And I actually, as a supplement to that, in your response to the last question, I wonder about the connections between biodiversity officers and the resources there in terms of, you know, GIS, for example, you know, or databases and so on, whether there's a degree to which they're shared and made more sort of widely available that way. Yes,
and I think that's a very good question. Actually, I see one of our biodiversity officers is here today. In terms of your first question in relation to biodiversity officers in Ireland, there are 5 at the moment, currently 5. It is something that had been you know, it's part of our national biodiversity action plan. It does state that the aim is to have a biodiversity officer in every local authority. At the moment, that isn't the case. And I suppose probably, as far as I know, Fingal County Council are probably the only county council who, either Fingal or Dublin City, it may be, have had the longest running biodiversity officer. I'm pretty new to DLR, but there was a gap in that role for about 5 or 6 years. There was one previously, Mary Toomey. So 5 biodiversity officers in Ireland currently. We met for the first time all together officially last year, but we are in communication with each other quite a lot on email and phone, etc. One biodiversity officer is in Wexford, the other is in Kerry. So there, you know, understandably it's difficult to meet. In terms of I would like to see more biodiversity officers. Obviously, I think it would be great if every county council could have a biodiversity officer. And in terms of then sharing information, we do share information, and in particular in the Dublin region, we all work as part of the Biosphere. So we are all on the Biosphere partnership. So we work together on projects in relation to that as well. And in terms of sharing information, again, it is that thing of we all have different systems at the moment. It would be a great idea, and I think it might be something that we could do through the Biosphere, to have maybe that system set up for us here in Dublin, and then extend and see how that can work for the rest of the country. But I think maybe the National Biodiversity Database Centre might be a good central portal for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's just funding, so it might be that maybe each local authority could contribute to funding something like that for somebody in the National Biodiversity Database Centre to actually have the resource to actually work on that, I think.
Yeah, that's the median, all right. Yeah. Okay, we're just about out of time. Does anyone else have one more quick question? Or will we leave it there? So, okay, well, since it's 11:30, we might leave it there. But so thanks ever so much, Anne. Really appreciate
Not at all.
sharing your experience. And as I say, we've established, I'm sure you're open to being contacted by researchers with an interest, and obviously similarly, please do reach out to us anytime that you're looking for someone that may input on a particular question. We're always open to that for sure.
Lovely. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.